Hello, and thank you for accessing this CPD session. We're going to focus on reflective practice in the digital T-level. The first thing we'll do today is share the outcomes of the session, which you see on the screen now. We'll be asking you to explore the subject and evaluate some reflective models, which you could use to support your professional reflections and T-level students. We'll need you to adopt an objective approach. It can be difficult to analyse and review your own practice, and this is where professionalism is important. Please approach the subject with constructive criticality and take pride in your current knowledge and practice with a positive attitude towards developing and improving them further. So the first question we're going to ask for you to consider is what reflection is in a professional context. Please take a moment to consider how you would define the term. We'll wait for a few seconds for you to make a physical or mental note of your answer, or you could pause the recording at this point if you'd prefer. Okay, we'll share a definition which you can see on the screen now. The important terms here seem to be review and practice with criticality and realism, using a constructive approach to inform the review. This review then leads to some sort of action, making changes which improve practice or maintain motivation, and these would be towards specific goals. Reflective practice requires a professional to be objective, to explore what they currently do, review all aspects of their work and how they can maintain or improve the standards required within their context. Some examples of this in the digital context might be about your current knowledge of delivery content around the currency and relevance. For example, you might know a lot about cybersecurity, but how current is it? How do you make sure that you are aware of the latest issues and concerns? Are the concerns you are raising your opinion based on something you have studied, or is it based on industry experience, which is current? Can you talk to employers to find out if something is still relevant? For example, look at ITIL and how this has recently, 2019, moved to version 4, which looks at integrating IT better into the more modern corporate culture. So let's start exploring how this could be structured or achieved. We're going to ask you to pause again for a moment to consider what reflective practice would look like, the steps or the stages it might take. What do you already know about the stages of reflective practice? And then please make a note again, mental or physical, and we'll pause again to allow you a little time to do this. Okay, so we'll start off by sharing a high-level overview of the steps or stages. We've started this off for you on the screen now. And so the first stage would be to carry out your professional activities. This could include both your normal and everyday tasks, your different or specific tasks, and also, and equally important, how you approach them or carry them out, your personal values, standards, and the expectations you set, but also by yourself and by your colleagues. The second step would then to be reflect on them. What goes well? What doesn't go so well? What are the factors which impact on how well they go? How does your approach impact? And what about the involvement of any others? You need to be objective here, take that step back and look at what happens from the outside. Imagine you're an onlooker, not involved personally, and evaluate what happens and why it happens. I know we keep using the word, but it's really important here that we are objective. That step back is really important to get a full, detailed and impartial view of what is taking place and why it's working or not working the way it is. You might also ask for the input of others here at this point, the professionals you work with, or even your peers, or if you're a student on a program, your fellow students, or workplace mentors, to get their input from the perspective of others around you. Really think about who this might be and ensure you gain input and feedback from the most relevant people, even those who might be difficult to ask. And then we move on to the next stage would be for to use those findings to plan the next step. What evaluations and reflections would impact on your next plan of action? What might or will you do to address any issues? Will you change something or keep doing something the way you were always doing it? You should have personal justifications for what you choose to do here. If you're not going to change anything, focus on why this is so. For areas where you will change things, what has informed the changes? Why have you chosen the changes you have? We need to think very carefully and objectively to have the best and most positive impact. If you've received some ideas from others, again, be objective and make a professional judgment as to whether you're going to try them out. It might be difficult to critically review your own work and take criticism with others, but using an objective professional approach can allow us to make informed choices which will help us to maintain high standards or improve or develop any areas that we need to. This can help to improve your self-awareness, identify your own strengths and weaknesses, develop new skills and knowledge, and improve your decision making. It might also be useful to use reflection to evaluate how well you create and build on work and relationships in the digital sector. Okay, so we've reflected on our practice and we've made a plan. The next step or stage would be to put the plan into action. It's important to review the changes and their impact, whilst also reviewing any areas which remain unchanged and how well they are going. Again, involving others might be useful here. And then finally, reviewing how well the whole process has gone. That would be the first or final stage of moving on with some more long-term planning of action. This final review might be something more formal, for example, a one-to-one with a manager or a teacher, or it might be something you keep to yourself. The stages or steps could be seen to overlap or even be more recurring. It's important to acknowledge here that reflective practice is very much an ongoing process, really without any start or end points, that the most successful professionals embed this into everything they do. And before we move on, please make another note about what you've learned so far. What has been new or unexpected? Has anything surprised you? Has your existing understanding of the topic been consolidated, or have you picked up anything new? It might be something that I've said that has resonated for you personally. Okay, so now let's look at some models of reflection, starting with Kolb's experiential learning cycle. The first stage of this model is having the concrete experience. This could be planned or unplanned. And in the digital context for DBS, this could be something like analysing data sets or blending data from multiple sources. For DSS, it could be planning, designing, installing, creating or configuring a small network. We do something or carry out a work activity, and we start off by describing what we happened, which then takes us to the second stage where we reflect on what has happened. We reflect on the experience and carry out an objective review related to why we think the activity went the way it did. What influenced what happened? What were the impacting factors related to how successful it was? And once we've done this, we then make links to other facts or knowledge and understanding that we have to make sure that they make sense of the experience. And that's what Kolb means by abstract conceptualization. And it's particularly important for something that's new. When something new or different happens, you make links to existing or prior knowledge to make sense of that new learning. And then the final stage is to actively experiment with any new knowledge, learning, or understanding gained from the whole process. Professionals can plan for the future regarding what they've gained from this reflective cycle and how it informs future practice. And this is easy to relate to something new, but it can also be just as beneficial to use in it with an existing activity or practice to review its effectiveness or success. It can be difficult to apply this to something you think you already know. So you've got to remember to be objective, take that step back, and don't focus on existing skills or knowledge. Be open to new learning at all times. The second model from Bode, Keogh, and Walker is based on the theory that we can improve our practice by better understanding our work practices and activities, specifically by reflecting on their background and influence and factors, including our own personal experience and emotions. To do this, we need to consider the experience and what we brought to it. You could think about this about being your own personal baggage, including your behavior, ideas, and feelings. We then need to use these and reflect on them. And important factors here include being objective, utilizing positive feelings, removing any obstructions, and re-evaluating the experience accordingly. The final stage is then the outcomes. What new perspectives do we have? How could we change our behaviors? How ready are we to apply new learning, and what commitment to action can we make? It's useful to bring on our individual emotions here and review them. We are not robots. Human emotions can play a large role in how we carry out our work activities, and professionals should take these into account by taking an objective approach to adapting and developing their work practices. Be aware of your emotions, but to be successful reflective practitioners, take them out when you carry out this review. An example of this in the digital sector could relate to something challenging. For example, the digital sector is forever evolving, and new technologies always are on the horizon. Therefore, if you don't evolve with them, then it's easy to end up teaching outdated practices which are no longer used in the industry. For example, look at how AI is impacting on cyber threats and how we can also use AI to help mitigation against this. So it might be useful here to think what preconceptions or expectations you might have related to a topic. Have you had a negative past experience when asking someone for their input, for example, or used technology which didn't work effectively? Try to not to make assumptions and think about how you could acknowledge your feelings whilst being open to other viewpoints and ideas. And then the final model today is from Gibbs's reflective cycle. There are 5 stages in this, starting with the description of what happened, then asking yourself, what were my feelings and reactions, and what was I thinking when it happened? How did these impact on the activity? Then an evaluation of how good or bad the activity went would take place, including the why and the how. The next stage relates to you making conclusions. And this includes considering alternatives. What else could you have done? What could you have done differently? And how might this have impacted on the activity? The final stage relates to the planning a course of action based on the previous steps. What would you do differently if you were to carry out that same activity or task again? Gibbs also suggests that you'd start the process again. The next time you carried out the activity or a similar one, that you'd start these stages from a start again. An example of this in the DBS portfolio would be researching and connecting data sets to write a proposal, presenting your findings, showing your results and drawing conclusions. In DSS, it relates to the role of the service desk support. So researching into the cause of a problem, offering support and solutions and resolving the problem, recording the results and finding reflections on processes followed. It could be developing a test system, for example, testing the compatibility of back-end server update with the existing back-end systems and software. In DSS, it relates to the role of the service desk support, like I said, and thinking about the cause, supporting, providing solutions and resolving them, recording results and findings, and then finally reflecting on those processes followed. So to summarize reflective practice, you would, first of all, carry out an activity. Review what you did and the influence and factors on what you did and how you did them. Then reflecting on what you've done and how the activity went. And the important part here is why the event went the way it did. You'll then be able to evaluate and see what you can learn from the experience, which will inform planning how to improve or further develop your practice. And remember that there are always ways in which we can improve. And then finally, review any changes to continually develop what we do, especially as new tools, systems, and process become available in our ever-changing world. Anyone who says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, would benefit from applying a reflective model to their work practice, especially as development in technology allows us to be more effective and efficient. Simply accepting a sufficient option and trying not to improve it isn't how mankind has developed. As the digital sector is always changing and updating, reflecting on our work practice is vital and should be embedded in everything we do. In the ever-evolving digital sector, keeping on top of new developments initiatives will allow you to continually learn and enhance your performance and employability. Thank you. We've come to the end of the session today. Please remember to reflect on what you've learned by accessing this and use it to plan your professional development. You'll find our provider development contact details on the screen now if you have any questions. Thanks again and goodbye.